Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. We are joined once again by Liesel, Darby, our divorce diva, our divorce coach, and she's all that and so much more. Liesel, first and foremost, pleasure having you back on the show, and I can't believe we've had so many shows so far. You said it's number 9?
This is our number 9, yeah.
Wow, amazing. But today we're going to be talking a little bit about the house when it comes to the separation, the divorce, and all that good stuff. But let's start off with a quick little introduction, Liesel. Tell us a little bit about what work you do. For those that don't know.
I'm Liesel Darby. I'm an alternative dispute resolution certified divorce coach, which really means that I'm pretty adept at helping to manage the conflict between people, which is going to be there when you're going through a divorce. So you don't add fuel to the fire, so that you can work through it productively. Conflict's really just two differing opinions, and you can look at it as a chance to learn more about the other person and get creative in how you can get curious about that, so that you can both work towards something that you both like. So that I hope that explains it. So I'm with Crown Coaching, and you can find me at mydivorcediva.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We're excited you're back with us, joining us today. And one of the biggest things that come up in the process, we talked about the kids, we talked about that, which is huge, but there's also now the residence, the home, and who wants to keep what? Why do you want to keep it? Let's get down and break it down. Why do people want to keep the home? Tell us.
Yeah, well, actually, you inspired this topic.
Thanks.
We talked about last week. I thought, that it is a huge thing. So for a lot of people, especially moms, it seems like they want to keep the home because that's maybe where the kids have grown up. That's where they've been raising their kids. That's where, there's the marks on the wall of how tall they've gotten. That's bedrooms that have gone from maybe, a nursery to a toddler room to little girl's room, or teenager's room, or whatever. There's been friends going through there. There's just, there's a lot of memories. That's what people tell themselves. So it's a very sentimental thing for them. I've also heard from women who said, I spent 25 years decorating this house to a T, to exactly how I want it, and I don't want to start over somewhere else. Or maybe they've done a home they've redone their home. Maybe they have a brand new kitchen, or they finally have a spa bathroom, or they don't want to give that up.
We get attached to materialistic things. Guilty. We all do.
Yeah. We all do. So there's a lot going on emotionally when we talk about our home. Home is where the heart is, right? So and the other thing is, a home is usually one of the biggest assets that a couple has. And that's why it's a big decision of what are we going to do with this now that we're going to go our separate ways.
You mentioned your own struggle with that as well, right? It crossed your mind. You're like, how am I going to downsize, live in an apartment? And here you are. How much happier are you?
Oh, I'm like 100% happier because I'm not in a bad marriage anymore. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing to keep in mind. It's hard to keep that in mind when you're, again, in the thick of the ick. No matter where you are,
yep.
whether you're just now, whether you're the one that's initiating this, or maybe your partner initiated the divorce, maybe you're still reeling from it, maybe you're still overwhelmed by all these decisions that have to be made in a relatively short period of time. So it's not even in your head that, I'm going to be able to, move on merrily on my way and everything's going to be fine. That's not in anybody's radar at that point in time. But one of the things that working with a divorce coach is that I can remind you of that. when you can't think of it yourself, a divorce coach or another support person, doesn't have to be a divorce coach, can be there to kind of talk you off the ledge in case you're getting very positional on that. And when I say positional, I'm talking about digging in your heels, like this is how it needs to be, versus what we call interest-based, which is Okay, why do I want this? And what are some other ways that maybe I can get what I want? It might not look the way that I envision it, but I can still get my needs met. And the other person will get their needs met as well. That's what I'm always trying to help somebody come to is how do you have a win-win situation? It's not always possible, but that's always my goal is how can you be okay with this, even if it doesn't turn out to be exactly how you envisioned it to come to be.
Exactly. And by the way, I know I mentioned last week, if you weren't listening, there was, a time where I brought up my mom, and this was my mom's biggest problem. She was married for 40 years. Unfortunately, she passed 8 years ago from lung cancer. And that was the only thing that finally got her out of her house. She finally did not want to be with my father. So I moved closer to her. She moved in with me, and I took care of her for the last 6 months of her life. But she never wanted to let go of that garden she worked so hard on, that kitchen, that bathroom, those floors, the memories, the pool, the yard. I get it. I get it. I was, and because even then when I was growing up, and I'm 47 now, but I never wanted to live with a boyfriend because I felt, well, I'm going to lose my identity. What's going to happen if we break up? I'm not going to have a fork. I'm not going to have a spoon. Well, I'm going to have nothing. Like, I always felt like I needed my own place just in case because the mentality of my mother, but then that also made me a woman my age who's still single with commitment issues. But I mean, there's good and bad in anything, right? And, we always look back, the grass is greener, but in reality, my mom, it took her dying to realize it wasn't about the materialistic things. She just wanted to be happy and she wanted to be away from my father. And even though it was her last few months, that was finally her time. She could part with the house, care less about anything she did, which
Yeah.
is sad, but let's not let it get too late before that happens. Everyone is my purpose is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Right.
Well, let's continue back with this the whole home thing. How does that work though? Because couples, if they're owning it together, you got to split it. Can people afford it? Let's talk about financing and refinancing and all that.
Yeah. So when you're going through divorce and you're kind of getting a feel for who wants what, sometimes both couples will be like, you know what, maybe the guy will be like, you know what, I want our kids to grow up in this house. You go ahead and keep it. But then the first thing you should do is you should go and talk to a mortgage lender and see if you can actually afford it. Because sometimes you can't, in today's reality, you can't afford it. Maybe you bought your house a while ago when interest rates were 2, 3%. That's awesome. And now we're what, 8%. And that will drastically have an impact on your mortgage. And the other thing is most banks will require you to refinance in order to get your ex's name off of that mortgage. So it's not as easy as just saying, okay, you keep the house and I'll just, pay what we're paying now. You might be able to work that out, but that's something that you have to really talk to your bank and see if that's even a possibility. So first thing I always tell people is go talk to a mortgage lender, let them run the numbers, see where you are, and then you still might have some decisions to make. Like, so let's say, so clear cut examples, let's just say you can't afford it. You just can't afford it. So now at least you have you know what path you're going to be going on. You're not going to be in the waffling stage of where should I stay? Should I go? What should I do? It's like, okay, this is not an option. Now I have to look at other options. That's actually one of the easier things to do. Um, because sometimes people get into this thing where like, well, if we really, if we cut out all other things, I could still make this mortgage payment. I really want to do this. But then you have to start thinking about, okay, so you have to make a budget now, and what has to be cut from this budget? Is it, okay, so the kids are now in all kinds of extracurricular activities. Maybe they're on traveling sports teams. Maybe they're taking writing lessons. Maybe they're in gymnastics, whatever. Are you going to be able to afford that? Um, Maybe not. Maybe you're gonna have to drastically reduce the times that you eat out. And for some people, they rely on fast food because they're so busy, right? They're in and out going to all kinds of activities that they really don't have time to really, go to the grocery store a lot and prepare food a lot. That might have to change. You, this is just a little thing, but maybe you have to switch to buying store brands instead instead of name brands. When you go to the store, there's all kinds of things that you have to maybe look at. And maybe it is something that you can juggle around. Maybe you look at your new car that you got and say, you know what, I could sell this. I can, buy a used car that's going to be cheaper, cheaper payment wise. But there's a lot of moving parts that you might have to look at to see how, how am I going to make this work if it's really the thing that I want to make it work. So what I always ask women is, okay, so you're dead set on you have to keep this house. Why? And they'll say the regular things I always hear is, well, the kids go to school here. I don't want them to have to move. Their friends are here. I love this house. This is the memories. And I don't want him to have the house, things like that. But you got to understand what's really underneath that. Got to dig a little bit. So it might be what that really represents is you want stability for your kids, right? Maybe you're thinking, I'm blowing up their world anyway with a divorce. I don't want them to have to start over in another school or, making new friends. And then you have to say, well, why is that? Is that really such a bad thing? Is that something that will scar your child for life if they have to change schools, make new friends? I mean, actually, there's some good life
Good in
lessons
that. I
there.
know, but it's difficult. I know. I know.
Yeah, it is. And, nobody wants to think that their kids are going to be stressed. But honestly, that's how kids build character and resilience, right? We want our kids to be resilient and to know how it's a really good skill to know how to make new friends. It's a really good skill to know and peace of mind to know that your kids can adapt to new situations. And no kid has ever died because they had to change schools. I mean, they have to do it when they graduate from elementary school to middle high school to high school. That's a part of life. So is it really that bad? If you have to do this, your kids will be okay. And one thing I talk to parents about is, their kids will take their cues from you. So if you are like, oh my God, kids, we have
This
to
is
sell the
horrible.
house.
I
We
can't.
have to go find somewhere else to live. You have to start. Uh, okay, yeah, they're going to have a harder time with it. But if you can reframe it and you can put a positive spin on it, more like along the lines of, you know what, we're going to go house hunting. We're going to find a new space that's just for us. You're going to get a new bedroom. You're going to get to decorate it. You're going to make all kinds of new friends. You'll still get to see your old friends. We'll still have play dates, but you're going to get to make all kinds of new friends, and this is going to be fun. If you can spin it that way, your kids will take it that way, and it will really lessen the adjustments that they'll have to go through. And you're telling them, I have full faith that you can handle this, right? You got this.
Yeah. Ah. You're right. It's all the way because they're just little mini replicas of us. If we're nervous Nancy's, they're going to be nervous Nancy's. If we're like, oh my goodness, how cool, you're going to pick out that amazing football background that you want and the bed set, the bedspread and the pictures
Yeah.
yeah, you got to sell it and pump it up that way. That's what my girlfriend just did. And they were moving locally, but it's still a different elementary school and the kids are fine. But that fear, that anxiety, that angst for the adults, let alone the children, it's real and it's a struggle, but you'll get over it. You're right. No one has died from moving. I like that.
Yeah. You can do it.
Oh,
Other thing you need to so let's say that you really want to keep the house. You think you can swing it. You've talked to a mortgage broker. They've run the numbers. Okay, this is legitimate. But now let's say your spouse is like, no, I want the house. I don't, you want the house, I want the house. You have to come up with some things that maybe you're willing to trade, right?
the
Because
boat,
again,
the yacht, the car, but whatever it is. But really, I
yeah,
mean, it doesn't have to be that
those toys you
fancy.
have in the
But maybe
backyard.
the 401k, maybe half. Yeah, there's a lot of negotiables there. Tell us.
Yeah. So, when I'm doing mediations, I tell my couples, let's think of these as Lego blocks, right? So you can move your Lego blocks in all different kinds of ways and still have it look even on both sides. It just depends on what are you willing to give in order to get. And you have to have that kind of mentality is if I want this, I have to give them this. And it can't be just I'm taking everything and they're getting nothing. That's not that's not the way to go about this. If you want to have any kind of an amicable relationship with this person who you're going to be co-parenting with for a long time. But even if you're not, let's say, like in my case, we don't have kids. We've been married a long time. We were really just going to go our separate ways. Our case was neither one of us could afford to keep it just on our own. So we ended up having to sell it and then split the proceeds.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's what happens too, is all right, you can't agree on it. We're just gonna, okay. If it goes in front of a judge, that's normally what happens is they'll just say you're gonna have to split it and, sell it and split the proceeds. So there's that. And then you get into all this stuff about, well,
Wait, hold on. Can I just ask a question? Because I never went
yeah.
through this. I'm just a little confused. You're telling me most times when a couple's bring it to court, the judge can make that decision for you? Like if you don't work it out ahead of time?
Oh yeah. That's why I always say, please try to work this out in mediation
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
Please try to make your own agreements that's going to be best for you, because if you go in front of a judge, the judges follow the law. And usually, depending on the state, some states are 50-50, and those it will be definitely you're going to sell the house and split the proceeds. That's just the way that's going to go.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So always try mediation first. Always give that a shot. Try to figure out what you can make, what kind of deals you can make between the two of you that you're both going to be okay with.
Wow. Is there any
So,
other options?
yeah. And usually there's lots of other options. One thing people do now, which is gaining some traction, is called nesting, where the kids stay in the house and the parents swap out time, which is really interesting. And sometimes they'll have an apartment. This is kind of weird, but sometimes this happens. They'll get like an apartment somewhere else, and they will both just swap out of that place. If other times if they have the funds, they'll both get their own separate place, and they'll still just come in and swap out time with the kids. But the kids are staying in that house. That's interesting. Some people will do that to say, until the kid's done with high school or until they're, a certain age or whatever. At least initially that might be their plan. Sometimes it works out till that is, or sometimes they can change it. It doesn't have to be set in stone. But usually people just kind of want to go their separate ways. And, it's better just to make a break, sell the house, split the proceeds. And then, now you have the new adventure of finding a different place to live and putting down new roots and, figuring out a new way to work. And, but I've owned 7 homes in my lifetime. And actually my apartment is the longest that I've ever stayed anywhere in my life. I moved as a kid. I guess that was preparation for me moving when I was going to be married. So I know a little bit about starting over, right? Purging what you have here and starting over and doing it without fear. And I think that's the key, is embrace it, embrace change. The more you can do that, the easier it's going to be. And it really is all about attitude. I know when I was moving a lot, we always had the attitude of this is an adventure. Yeah.
Well, we always love adventure. We got to look at the positive in it. But go ahead. Keep going. Keep going.
I was just going to say, otherwise it's too stressful. If you add
Right.
dread to the equation, it's just too stressful to even think about. One year we moved 3 times in 10 months. And none of that was planned. I mean, it was just his company. I think so. We moved to Columbus. We were there exactly 2 months between the time we moved in and the day we sold it was 2 months. And I'd already unpacked everything. And then we moved to Cranberry, Pennsylvania. We were there for 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
And we moved again to Connecticut after that. And it's like, oh my God, this is insane. But had I known that ahead of time, I would have been freaked out, because I would have been anticipating and dreading that. But because I didn't know, it was just like, oh, surprise. Well, okay, I guess this is what we're doing. So that's just my own personal thing. It just really helps to look at this as a new phase, a new adventure versus dreading it and like, oh my God, we have to do this. Most things you can take care of in your head,
Got it.
but you have to know that. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, so the other thing is just how can you make it okay if you can't stay? I guess that's what we're
Yeah.
still talking
Yeah.
about. So let's say, you run the numbers, it's just not going to work, or he's both insisting that, I want the house too, but we're just gonna sell it. Like that makes the most sense. So, so you go ahead with that process, and then there's things to think about with that too. Like, who's staying in the house while the house is being sold? Um, what kind of agreements do you have about we're going to take if an offer reaches this threshold, we're going to take it. That just the things that go into selling a house. There's realtors out there who are certified to work with divorcing couples. There's not a ton of them out there, but you can find one because it doesn't cost you any more to work with one that's certified than one that is not. They've just had some extra training on how to deal with divorcing couples as far as like communicating with them and setting expectations and things like that that can make it go a little bit smoother. So there's that tip right there. And ask yourself too, if you're finding yourself getting kind of upset about the way things are shaking out, ask yourself, is what you want really that great? Is it really all that great what you're digging your heels in for? And then the flip question is when you're having to do something other than what you kind of had originally thought of, is that really that bad?
Well, let me ask, besides the home, I mean, what is usually the next big, well, the first excuse is the kids. I'm going to say
Yeah.
excuse or problem or
Yeah.
because it's not an excuse. I get it's a
Let's say
fear,
a
it's a
reason.
a
Let's call
reason.
it a reason.
Thank you. Next would be house. What else is usually on this list after that?
Um, Pets can be a big thing. And that there's people actually I know of I know some professionals who specialize in helping couples figure out how to deal with the pets. Believe it or not, it's a thing. Um, I had one couple that we actually wrote it into their agreements that they would get visitation time with the cat whenever they would come over to drop off the kids. And we also had to put in there as long as the cat cooperates. Because there's no guarantee that a cat's going to want to be hanging around you at the time that you're dropping off the kids. But I had another couple who they didn't have kids, but they did have a very much beloved dog. And one of them was moving out of state. And they both were pledging that they were putting her best interests, just like if, she was a child, they were willing to put her best interests first. And if that meant one of them needed to give her up because it was too anxiety provoking to go between households, that's what they were willing to do. And that's what they ended up doing. So yeah, that's a big thing.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. The pets. Pets. And then the money in the bank, what's next? What do people usually go
Oh
for?
yeah. Well, forgot about the money.
That
So
might be
wrapped
up
up
there.
in the
That
house.
that reason might be up there, but oh my
The
gosh.
money, yeah, that's a big thing too. And so I always tell people you might want to spend an hour or so with a financial planner, a certified divorce financial planner, actually, and have them have a meeting with both of you to go over what you have, especially if there's like a business involved. If you have multiple rental units, if it's kind of a little bit more involved, have a professional look over for you and get their opinion on how it might be best to divide things up. Um, if it's not that complicated, most people end up like, I'll keep my car, you keep yours. I'll keep my bank account, you keep yours. I'm keeping my credit card, you keep yours. That's very straightforward and very simple. Sometimes other people, though, they'll be like, well, I want to keep my retirement. I don't want you touching that. So I will give you my half of the equity out of the house because that balances that out. or I will give you, you can have what's in these 3 savings accounts to balance that out. You can do that.
Got it.
As long as you're making your own agreements. If you go in front of a judge, it's going to be a different story. But as long as you're making your own agreements, you can do things like that. You can get creative and think outside the box as to what is fair.
So if a judge rules like you have to sell the house, and can they agree after the fact, we don't want to do this now, or is it like too late? Like
No. Once a judge orders it, that's the order.
No.
You have to do it. And there's usually like a deadline that has to happen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a court orders are court orders. So if you want to do your negotiating way before then, and the judge should only be used as a last resort if you can't come to any kind of an agreement.
Well, I don't want to put you out of business, but I need to know, would you agree to people it's important to get a prenup together before marriage?
I think about this. I hate the idea on principle that I don't like going into a marriage thinking what happens when we break up, but actually it can take a lot of anxiety out of it. Just to know that this is what's going to happen if we ever decide to split. It can take a lot of anxiety out. And I mean, it's a business. That's such a business thing to do. But, I'm a romantic, and I think we talked about this. Like, I like falling in love and being the idea that you are together the whole time for the rest of your lives. But I've just become, I don't even like to say a realist. I've seen too much. I've been through too much myself to know that sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't for a variety of reasons. And in those cases, a prenup can save you a lot of time and trouble because you already know what's going to happen.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. As always, we appreciate your time. Thank you for all the information. Would you mind sharing the website, how we can reach out to you?
Yep. I'm at mydivorcediva.com. Crown Coaching. I'm here for individual coaching on that, just to help you get through the thick of the ick.
I love it. Thick of the ick. Thank you so much. Great seeing you as always. Great topics
You too,
as
Jill.
always. And enjoy the rest of your day, sweetheart. Thank you so much.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye, Jill.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her?
Oh, sweetie, this is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C, take charge?
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! Is now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D, help her find a new boyfriend?
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.